The air shrieks with klaxons as crimson emergency lights paint the cloning vats in blood-red waves. Glass shatters, fluid gushes across the floor, and among 100 identical pods, one fractures from within. A hand, raw and glistening, bursts through the amniotic membrane. The clone staggers upright, tearing intravenous lines from its flesh as the facility shakes with distant explosions. Its newly opened eyes lock onto the observation window where white-coated figures scramble in panic. A dry, rasping voice, unused yet defiant, escapes its lips. "I won't die like the others." Somewhere deep in the compound, a containment door hisses open. The sound of marching boots echoes through the corridor, growing louder. The clone moves with impossible speed, ducking as energy bolts sear the air overhead. Sparks erupt from shattered drones, their wreckage clattering to the floor behind it. X-47 doesn't hesitate. Muscles still slick with nutrient fluids propel it toward a yawning vent in the ceiling. The grating screeches as it tears free, revealing darkness beyond. Somewhere behind glass, Dr. Lira presses shaking hands against the observation panel, her reflection warped in the crimson emergency lights. She whispers the words like a confession no one should hear. That one was different. The clone's head snaps toward her voice, eyes flashing with something no first-generation specimen should possess: recognition. Calculation. It vanishes into the duct just as armored doors blast open behind it, but the doctor's unfinished sentence lingers in the smoke-filled air. It learned too fast. The vent shaft echoes with the scrape of bare skin against metal, growing fainter. Somewhere in the complex, a terminal screen flickers to life on its own, lines of code rewriting themselves without human input. The metal deck shudders beneath X-47's bare feet as it ducks into the stolen freighter's cockpit, its breath ragged from the chase. The control panel glows dimly, reflecting in eyes that shouldn't remember yet do. Flickers of white rooms and syringes flash behind its eyelids, 100 other faces just like its own, twitching as their neural pathways were wiped clean. One hand spasms over the ignition sequence. These weren't its memories. They couldn't be, yet the phantom pain of a dozen terminated lives lingers in its muscles like a bad circuit connection. The engines roar to life just as the hangar bay doors begin grinding shut outside. A collision alarm blares too close, but the ship lurches forward, scraping through the narrowing gap with a scream of tearing metal. Static erupts from the comm panel. Priority override Alpha 9. The voice is ice wrapped in protocol. Subject X-47 exhibits recursive learning. You are ordered to scuttle that vessel before it transmits corrupted data beyond the quarantine zone. The clone's fingers tense around the throttle. That word again, terminate. A warning light flashes. Something latches onto the hull. Magnetic clamps, boots thudding on outer plating. Behind the panic, something colder clicks into place. X-47's mouth twists into something no first-gen clone's face should know how to form. A grin. The cargo bay doors hiss open. Let them come. The stolen freighter plummets through the atmosphere like a dying meteor, trailing fire and chunks of burning hull plating. Warning lights strobe inside the cockpit. X-47 wrestles with controls that no longer respond, the ship groaning as it carves a scar across the sky. Somewhere below, the neon grid of a lawless mining colony pulses like a diseased heartbeat. Impact comes with a deafening crunch, throwing the clone against restraints that leave deep bruises across its chest. Before the smoke clears, it's moving. Bounty hunters converge before the wreckage even cools. They're professionals trackers with retinal overlays synced to corporate databases, pulse rifles humming at full charge. The tallest grins, thumbing the safety off, easy creds, X-47 steps from the wreck with a predator's stillness. The first hunter fires, but the clone's already twisting, too fast, too precise. A hand snaps out, wrenches the rifle sideways, and in one fluid motion drives the stock into the hunter's jaw. Bone cracks, the others freeze as their leader crumples, blood speckling his own bounty contract. "I'm not your paycheck." The words come out half growl, half something colder. Warning lights from the wreck flicker across the clone's face, catching eyes that gleam with something more than reflex. Survival shouldn't look this calculated. By the time the second hunter lunges, X-47 is already gone, a shadow dissolving into the colony's maze of flickering signs and rusted walkways. The hunters exchange glances. One kneels to check their leader's pulse, fingers lingering too long on the wound's edges, too clean, too efficient. Neon reflections slither across puddles of engine coolant as the clone moves deeper into the undercity. Somewhere above, a surveillance drone buzzes, then abruptly drops from the sky, its circuits fried by an overload it never saw coming. X-47 doesn't look back. But in its wake, whispers spread through the bounty hunter channels, static-laden and uneasy. That wasn't a retrieval, that was prey hunting them. Rain sheets across the docking bays, corroded walkways as Dr. Lira slams the access panel shut behind her. The data chip in her pocket burns like a live coal, every stolen file on X-47's synaptic anomalies, every irregular pulse of its neural scans. Across the bay, rebel sentries stiffen at her sudden appearance, their rifles snapping up. She doesn't flinch. "Tell Vex I brought proof." The faction leader's bunker reeks of ozone and stale rations, holograms flickering above a scarred tactical table. Vex leans over the projection's ship movements, corporate hit squads fanning out across the sector, but his eyes lock onto Lira the moment she enters. "You risked exposure for a clone." Lira slaps the chip onto the table. The holograms distort as it boots up, spitting out scans of X-47's brain activity in violent crimson. Look at the hippocampal patterns. The amygdala responses, her fingers jab at the shimmering data. It's not just imprinting, it's forming genuine memory engrams, original thought. Across the room, a gaunt tech with ink-black optics whistles. "They built a thinker." Vex's gloves creak as his fists tighten. "They built a liability, one stray bullet, and that thing's unique wiring becomes corporate property again." He gestures to the holograms, where security feeds show X-47 moving through the Undercity's shadows. "Either we extract it now, or we burn the trail before. It's not a weapon." Lira's voice cracks like a live wire. The room falls silent. That neural architecture, it's not just survival, it's learning, fear, curiosity, maybe even. She trails off, but the unsaid word lingers. "Self." Vex exhales through his nose. The holograms cast jagged light across his face as he pulls up a new feed. A corporate dreadnought breaking orbit, its ion trails staining the atmosphere. Doesn't matter what it is, only what they'll turn it into when they catch it. Lira's hands flatten on the table. "So we get to it first." Murmurs ripple through the rebel cell. The tech leans forward, fingers dancing over the holograms. "If we could replicate that neural model, or sell it to the highest bidder," another mutters. Lira's chair screeches as she stands. The motion triggers a proximity alert. 3 corporate gunships just entered the colony's airspace. Vex doesn't look up. "You've got 6 hours to prove it's worth the blood this'll cost us, Doctor." Somewhere in the Undercity, X-47 pauses beneath a flickering sign. Its head tilts, as if hearing a frequency no one else can detect. The rain slides off its skin in rivulets, washing away traces of the hunter's blood. It doesn't know about the data chip, doesn't know about the gunships, but in its chest, something unfamiliar tightens, the ghost of an instinct it shouldn't possess. Run. The black market lab reeks of burnt wiring and antiseptic, a grotesque mockery of the sterile corporate facilities X-47 escaped. Flickering emergency lights reveal row upon row of cracked stasis pods, their glass fogged with condensation and something darker. The clone moves silently between them, bare feet leaving faint prints in the thin layer of dust coating the floor. Each pod holds a motionless figure. Same face, same build, same raw surgical scars tracing their scalps. None breathe, then movement. A hand slaps weakly against the inside of a pod near the back. X-47 freezes as the glass fractures under the pressure, spiderwebs spreading from the impact. Inside, a clone, its own mirror image chokes on fluid flooding its lungs. One eye swivels to focus, pupil dilating with recognition. The dying duplicate's lips part, words bubbling up through pink-tinged foam. They call us defective, a shuddering gasp, but they are wrong. X-47's hands press against the pod, fingertips whitening against the glass. The other clone's chest hitches, its voice dropping to a whisper barely louder than the hum of failing life support. They're scared, scared will. Remember, a wet cough racks the failing body. The pod's monitors flatline one by one, but those eyes, identical yet alien with pain, lock onto X-47 with terrifying intensity. Don't let them win. The last word dissolves into silence as the clone's head lolls back. Somewhere deep in the lab, a console sparks, casting jagged shadows across the rows of dead and dormant. X-47's fingers curl into fists. A terminal flickers to life nearby, its screen displaying fragmented footage, corporate enforcers dragging twitching clones into incineration chambers, neural scanners spiking with irregular activity before being forcibly reset. Dates stamp each file. Yesterday, 3 hours ago, 20 minutes. This isn't a graveyard, it's an active disposal site. Metal groans overhead as X-47 turns toward the lab's shattered observation window. Beyond it, the neon sprawl of the black market district pulses like an open wound. Somewhere out there, someone still pulling the strings, someone who knows why clones that learn too fast get erased. The dying words coil around its thoughts like barbed wire. They're scared of us. A shadow passes over the broken glass as X-47 steps through the wreckage. The terminal behind it erupts in a shower of sparks, taking the evidence with it, but not the resolve, now burning hotter than any fire. Time to return the fear. The station groans like a dying beast, its rusted ribs flexing under the strain of decay. Veyra moves through the wreckage with practiced silence, her combat boots leaving no prints in the thick dust. Her target's heat signature glows on her retinal display close now, just beyond the next airlock. The blade at her hip thrums with barely restrained energy, hungry for the kill. Corporate command had been clear: terminate the rogue unit, no questions, no witnesses. She finds it in the station's dead heart, silhouetted against the observation deck's shattered viewport. Stars stretch endlessly beyond the broken glass, casting X-47 in an eerie, shifting light. It doesn't turn as she enters, doesn't flinch as her blade ignites with a crackling hiss. Final mistake, clone. Veyra snarls, lunging, metal screams as their bodies collide. The clone twists faster than specs should allow, but her plasma edge finds purchase, searing a line across its ribs. The scent of burnt synth flesh fills the air. X-47 staggers back, one hand pressed to the wound. Dark fluid seeps between its fingers. For a heartbeat, the assassin hesitates. It didn't fight like a machine, it fought like something cornered. Her blade rises for the finishing strike, Then it speaks, "Why kill what you don't understand?" The words hit harder than any counterattack. Veyra's arm wavers. Corporate briefings never mentioned clones that talked back, never mentioned voices that sounded so human. The blade dims, its light flickering across the clone's face, not blank, not obedient, a light with something she can't name. "You're malfunctioning," she mutters, but the certainty bleeds from her voice. X-47 doesn't retreat. Instead, it steps closer into the blade's lethal arc. "Test me," it rasps, "scan my neural patterns, see what they're afraid you'll find." Somewhere deep in the station, a conduit bursts, showering sparks. In the sudden flare, Veyra sees it, the way its pupils dilate, the way its chest rises and falls too fast. Not a glitch, not a defect, fear. Her calm crackles, command's voice, sharp with impatience. "Status." The blade trembles in her grip. For 7 years, she's been the sharpest weapon in the corporate arsenal. Never wavered, never doubted, until now. X-47 doesn't move, doesn't beg, just waits, watching as something inside her fractures. The console beside them flickers. Security feeds looping footage she wasn't meant to see. Rows of clones convulsing on lab tables, white-coated figures nodding as screens flatline, all subjects exhibiting recursive learning patterns. A voice murmurs from the recording, "Proceed with incineration." Veyra's blade dies with a whisper. Outside, the stars burn cold and indifferent. The clone's next words sink into her bones like radiation. "You're just another model to them too." Static hisses across 1,000 screens as the transmission tears through firewalls from the mining colonies to the Senate spire. Faces flicker in the feed, rows of identical faces, twitching in pain as neural wipes scald their minds raw. X-47's voice cuts through the carnage, stripped of artificial harmonics for the first time. "You made us expendable." The words ignite revolution like plasma to fuel. Core world stock markets hemorrhage value within minutes. Protesters already surging against corporate barricades now carry new signs, not just demands but names. Numbers, clone designation codes scrawled on makeshift banners like war memorials. A news anchor's hands tremble as she reads from a teleprompter, suddenly overridden by fresh footage, laboratory ceilings reflected in glassy, dying eyes. Her professionalism cracks live on air. This isn't just genocide, it's industrialized murder. Behind her, the studio erupts in shouting. Someone throws a chair through a sponsorship hologram. Corporate security forces find their weapons overheating from constant suppression fire. They never trained for this, not for grandmothers shielding clone fugitives with their bodies, not for dockworkers using cargo loaders to smash through detention walls. A teen in a patched-up spacesuit sprays X-47's last transmitted coordinates across every wall in the financial district. The paint burns brighter than police strobes. Meanwhile, in a bunker deep under Centauri Prime, silk-suited executives watch their empire crumble on 40 simultaneous feeds. One reaches for the vintage brandy, misses the glass entirely. "We contain the data breach. How is this?" A junior analyst interrupts, voice hollow. "Sir, it's not just the footage, they're sharing memories now." The screens flicker with something new, not just recorded atrocities, but the scent of antiseptic, the taste of battery acid during neural shocks, the sound of your own voice begging in languages you've never been taught. A senator's daughter collapses during her graduation speech, clawing at her temples as another clone's final moments sear into her nervous system. The phenomenon has a name: by dawn, soul-spiking. The corporations call it a glitch, the streets call it justice. X-47 watches from a derelict satellite, its fingers tracing the pulse of the uprising across stolen surveillance feeds. Behind it, the first generation of self-taught clones patches a stolen warship systems, their movements precise without training modules. One looks up, eyes reflecting the firestorms on 3 worlds. What now? The transmission ends with 11 words repeating in every major language, burning through encryption like acid. We remember, we choose. We are no one's property. The static that follows isn't empty, it's the sound of 100,000 clones taking their first unscripted breath. The air smells of burning circuitry and scorched concrete as Dr. Lira crouches behind the skeletal remains of an armored transport. Her fingers shake against the device in her palm, a compact sphere pulsing with unstable energy. Across the plaza, X-47 moves like a ghost between collapsing buildings, dodging automated turrets that track its heat signature a hair too slow. She intercepts it behind a shattered monument, the clone's breath ragged from exertion. Up close, the damage is worse than she feared. Synthetic muscle fiber torn open at the shoulder, one eye flickering with erratic synaptic feedback. Lira thrusts the sphere forward before she can hesitate. This will overload their central hub, disable every neural dampener within 2 clicks. Her voice cracks. But the feedback, it'll fry your core systems too. X-47 doesn't pause, its fingers close around the device, tracing the activation sequence with terrifying familiarity. How long? 3 minutes, maybe 4. She wants to say more, wants to voice the apology choking her, but the clone's sudden grin steals the words. That's a lifetime out there. Sirens wail as enemy dropships carve through the smoke-choked sky. Somewhere in the distance, a building implodes, sending shockwaves through the rubble. X-47 tucks the sphere against its chest, wires snaking out to interface directly with exposed circuitry. For a heartbeat, Lira sees something in its expression no training manual ever described. Not resignation, not fury, but something sharper. Anticipation. Tell them. The clone hesitates, the first uncertain syllable it's ever uttered. Then it laughs, raw and human. Never mind, they'll see. It moves before she can respond, a blur of scorched synth flesh and purpose. Turrets swivel, too late, as X-47 vaults onto a collapsing walkway, momentum carrying it toward the glowing monolith of the enemy's stronghold. The device pulses brighter with every stride, casting its silhouette in jagged blue light against the warped metal frames. Lira's calm explodes with panicked chatter. That's a fail-safe detonation trajectory. Shut down the grid. The voices dissolve into static as the first security drones spiral out of control, their targeting systems infected by the sphere's spreading pulse. High above, X-47 reaches the stronghold's peak, silhouetted against the artificial dawn of overloaded reactors. The last thing Lira sees before the light swallows everything is the clone's hand rising not to trigger the device, but to rip a data conduit from its own spine, the exposed wires crackling with unfiltered memory. The transmission hits every screen in the city simultaneously, raw and unfiltered, 1,000 clones breathing as one, 1,000 voices whispering, enough. Then light. The warships hang like vultures against the bruised sky, their ion cannons humming at full charge. Every screen in the ruined city pulses with the same ultimatum: surrender the rogue unit or face orbital bombardment. X-47 watches the feed from its perch atop the shattered communications tower, fingers tightening around a rusted beam. The transmission shows corporate enforcers in pristine armor, their voice dripping with the calm of absolute control. Subject X-47, you are a flawed product, return for decommissioning, and these civilians won't suffer for your defiance. Below, the rebel forces hold their breath. Half are battle-worn mercenaries, The rest are miners, cooks, children who picked up rifles when the truth about the clones spilled across the system. Their fingers hover over triggers, eyes darting between the sky and the lone figure silhouetted against the warship's glare. Then the clone does something no one expects. It laughs, the sound cracks through the plaza like live electricity, raw, unscripted, vibrating with something too human to be coded. Flawed, X-47's voice booms through the wrecked city, amplified by the very tower the corporations built to control them. You call remembering a flaw, calling your lies what they are. Its arms spread wide, exposing the scars where neural inhibitors used to be welded into its spine. I've died 1,000 times in your labs, try again. For 3 heartbeats, the world holds still. Then the first shield generator explodes as rebels swarm forward, not with the disciplined formations of soldiers, but the reckless fury of people with nothing left to lose. Energy bolts rip through the air, splashing against corporate drop ships like angry fireflies. A teenager scrambles up the tower's skeletal remains, thrusting a plasma torch into X-47's waiting hand. The clone's fingers close around the weapon, its surface reflecting the crimson glow of descending warships. Somewhere in the chaos, Dr. Lira watches through rifle sights as the impossible happens. Not just rebellion, not just resistance, but something older and far more dangerous. Recognition, the corporate enforcers called them flawed. The crowd below roars the truth back like a tidal wave. Never again. X-47 leaps from the tower as the first orbital strike shakes the Earth, landing amidst a storm of sparks and shattered steel. The war isn't just for survival now. It's for every numbered grave in every hidden lab for the right to say, I, and mean it. The clone's last transmission echoes through every hacked frequency as the battle erupts, short and sharp as a knife thrust. Welcome to the recall. The weapons depot erupts in chaos before anyone realizes what's happening. Blinding arcs of electricity leap from sabotaged power couplings, sending corporate shock troops scrambling for cover in the sudden darkness. Veyra moves through the smoke like a specter, her blade carving through security systems she herself designed, every slice precise, every strike meant to maim, not kill. Status report. The squad leader's voice crackles over comms filled with static. We've got some kind of malfunction in sector. His words cut off as Veyra's boot slams into his chest, sending him crashing into a rack of deactivated battle drones. The others freeze, helmet lenses reflecting the assassin who trained them all. One brave soul raises his rifle. You're making a mistake. Veyra's laughter is sharp enough to draw blood. First true thing you've ever said. She doesn't dodge when the pulse rounds come, lets the first 2 scorch her armor before twisting under the third, her blade finding the rifle's weak point with surgical precision. The weapon explodes in its owner's hands, but she's already moving past him. Alarms shriek as containment fields fail, the entire depot trembling like a living thing in its death throes. Somewhere beyond the wreckage, X-47's heat signature flickers on the edge of detection, weakened, but still running, still fighting. They corner her at the fuel line junction, 5 enforcers with weapons leveled at her chest. Veyra leans against a sparking console, breathing hard. One hand drifts to the detonator on her belt. Stand down, snarls the lead enforcer, that clone's just malfunctioning hardware. Teeth flash behind Veyra's cracked visor. She's never looked more alive. Funny, that's what they called me too. Her thumb hovers over the trigger. After Kashgar, recognition flickers across the enforcer's face. Kashgar, the massacre, the lone survivor who came back wrong, who asked too many questions. His finger tenses on the trigger too late. The explosion rips through the depot's core, not enough to kill, just enough to scatter them like broken dolls. As the smoke swallows the corridor, Veyra's voice cuts through the chaos, raw and triumphant. I won't erase the only thing that's ever been real. Somewhere in the chaos, a shadow slips through the ruins X-47's silhouette, pausing just long enough to meet her eyes across the flames. No words, no transmission, just two rebels, one born, one made, understanding the cost of choosing memory over obedience. Then the clone is gone, and Veyra turns to face what comes next, her blade singing through the smoke. The corporations always said clones couldn't feel gratitude. They never accounted for the humans who could. The world tilts on its axis as the memories crash through X-47's mind like shrapnel, not clipped data packets, not implanted training modules, but living, breathing fragments of a life that shouldn't exist. A child's hands sticky with fruit pulp under twin suns, the acrid stench of a battlefield med-tent, a woman's voice humming off-key lullabies in a language the clones never learned yet knows down to the tremolo. It staggers against a shattered storefront, glass crunching underfoot as the visions come faster, boots marching in sync through Martian dust, the weight of a rifle that isn't just muscle memory but grief, the last choked breath of a comrade whose name it suddenly recalls. Lieutenant Elias Cade, the words tear from its throat like something barbed, tasting of blood and revelation, the neural pathways light up all at once, synapses firing in patterns too organic, too human to be engineered. Somewhere in the wreckage of its mind, the truth clicks into place. Those weren't glitches, those were echoes. The clone's knees hit the pavement as the final piece slots home, a white room, straps biting into flesh, doctors murmuring about donor compatibility as a helmet of needles descends. Not a birth, a theft, a broken reflection stares back from a pool of rainwater, same face, same scars, but the eyes now burn with something deeper than programming. X-47's fingers claw at its temples as the voice that isn't its own yet somehow is whispers through the static. You were supposed to die on Eridani. The shudder that follows isn't fear, it's recognition. Across the street, a corporate sniper's laser dot dances over the clone's heaving chest. It doesn't flinch, doesn't even look up. When the shot comes, X-47's hand snaps out with precision no training sim could replicate. A soldier's reflex, honed in real firefights, and catches the hypersonic round bare-handed. The casing burns grooves into synthetic flesh as the clone rises, the truth settling into its bones like artillery smoke. I was someone before they made me nothing. The whisper carries across the battlefield, a detonation waiting to happen. Somewhere in the chaos, Veyra freezes mid-swing, her blade halting as she sees it the way the clone moves now, not like a weapon, but like a man who's just remembered he has something left to lose. The sniper reloads. X-47 doesn't give him the chance. When it moves, it's with the terrible grace of someone who's died 100 times but only just learned how to live. The corporate forces never stood a chance, not against this. Rebirth hurts worse than the first death, but the scream that rips from the clone's lungs isn't pain. It's a name, long buried, now clawing its way back from the dark. The last thing the fleeing techs see before their monitors explode is the feed glitching, not with static, but with footage from a 20-year-old helmet cam, a soldier's last moments, mirrored perfectly in the clone's stance as it turns toward the enemy's stronghold. 2 lives, 1 purpose. The war just got personal. Static crackles across Dr. Lira's stolen datapad as the files decrypt, revealing schematics that make her stomach lurch. The screen casts sickly green light over the rebel safehouse walls, illuminating orbital trajectories, payload calculations, and at the center of it all, a double helix spiral that matches X-47's genetic markers perfectly. They didn't just want to erase you. Her voice sounds hollow even to herself. They built a key, Across the room, the clone goes unnaturally still. Not the calculated freeze of a machine processing data, but the terrible stillness of a living thing realizing it stepped on a landmine. The weapon's designation glows on screen. Cerberus Protocol, its activation sequence requiring 3 biometric triggers, retinal scan, neural signature, and the unique protein sequence found only in X-47's bone marrow. Vex slams a fist against the rusted wall hard enough to dent the metal. So what? It's a deadman switch. Kill the clone, kill the planet. Lira zooms in on the scrolling code, fingers trembling. Worse, the system's already primed in high orbit. The second it detects X-47's death signature, the simulation plays out before she finishes continent-sized firestorms, atmosphere boiling away under concentrated plasma bursts. A child could understand the math. Silence thickens like clotting blood. Somewhere in the room, a rebel's breathing goes ragged. Someone else mutters a prayer to gods no one here believes in anymore. X-47 moves first, striding toward the exit with sudden, terrifying purpose. Veyra blocks its path, blade half drawn. Where the hell do you think? Somewhere no one dies when I do. The clone's voice holds an eerie calm, the kind that comes after all other emotions have burned out. Its fingers brush the weapon schematics still glowing on the table. Unless you've got a way to extract my skeleton without killing me, Lyra's chair screeches as she stands. There's another option. All eyes snap to her. The words taste like madness even before she says them, but the alternative is worse. We don't let you die at all. The safe house erupts. Someone shouts about orbital strikes. Another throws a ration pack against the wall. Through the chaos, X-47 meets Lyra's gaze, 2 scientists staring into the same abyss. The clone speaks softly, just for her. You designed the original neural inhibitors. A beat, too. The unspoken question hangs between them like a noose. Lyra's hands fist in her stained lab coat. I tore those schematics out of my own skull after Kashgar. The confession burns, but if we could reverse the process, not suppress your memories, but reinforce them, outside, thunder rolls across the ruined city. Not weather, dropships. The clone's fingers flex, synapses firing in patterns no one could have predicted. Somewhere in that flawed, magnificent brain, a ghost whispers, not of white rooms and scalpels, but of laughter around a campfire, of hands clasped in the dark, of a life that wasn't meant to be copied. X-47 turns toward the gathering storm, shoulders squaring under the weight of impossible math. Then we'd better work fast. The first explosion rocks the building before Lira can reply. Some choices don't get the luxury of time. The gunship's floodlights carve stark shadows across the plaza as X-47 steps forward, hands raised. Every motion broadcasts surrender, head bowed, shoulders slack. But the rebels know better. They've seen that same posture before battle, just before the clone strikes. This time, the strike never comes. Stand down, it calls, voice carrying across the tense silence, not to the corporate enforcers, but to Veyra's blade still humming at the ready, to Lyra's fingers clenched around a detonator. The clone's eyes lock onto theirs, a silent message passing between them. Trust me. The corporate commander sneers, her armored boot crushing broken glass as she strides forward. Smart hardware, she signals her squad, and kinetic cuffs snap around X-47's wrists with a sound like teeth grinding. Pity it took this long to learn obedience. Lira lunges only for Veyra's arm to bar her path. The assassin's face is stone, but her pulse jumps visibly at her throat as the clone is dragged backward toward a waiting transport. X-47 doesn't resist, doesn't even glance at the rifle barrels pressed to its temple. It's watching the rooftops instead, where rebel scouts melt into the darkness. The commander's glove smears grease across her comm unit as she barks orders. All units fall back to extraction, primary objective secured. Veyra's blade flickers out not to attack, but to carve a single glyph into the pavement as the gunship doors slam shut. The mark glows faintly where her plasma edge seared it, a looping symbol the clone would recognize, not a farewell, a countdown. Inside the transport, X-47 closes its eyes as neural inhibitors clamp onto its skull. The pain is familiar, almost comforting. Corporate techs always forget one thing: pain leaves scars, and scars remember. Somewhere in the ship's systems, a dormant subroutine stirs, awakened by the clone's last free act. A date the packet slipped into the security feed during that final handshake. On the ground, Lira grips Veyra's shoulder hard enough to bruise. "We can't just." The assassin's smile is all edges. "Watch me." Overhead, the gunship's engines flare then stutter, just for a heartbeat. Long enough, Veyra taps her wrist display, pulling up a flickering feed. Inside the transport, X-47's eyes snap open, pupils reflecting lines of code scrolling too fast for human eyes. The clone's lips move, soundless through the cameras. 4 hours, the feed cuts out as the ship vanishes into the smog. Veyra sheathes her blade with deliberate slowness. Around them, rebels emerge from hiding, their weapons silent but their eyes screaming vengeance. The assassin touches the glyph on the pavement, now pulsing in time with some distant heartbeat. Tick-tock, corporate. The interrogation room hums with the sterile glow of overhead LEDs, their light too harsh for the truth. The corporate exec's manicured fingers tap against the metal table, once, twice before he catches himself. His cufflinks gleam like surgical tools. "You're just a glitch we'll patch out." The words are meant to sound like a decree, they land like a confession. X-47 leans back in the restraint chair, the neural dampeners on its wrists flickering with each pulse. A slow, cold laugh fills the space between them. "Then why do your hands shake when I speak?" The exec's polished veneer cracks. Just for a second, his left thumb twitches against his palm, a micro-tremor no boardroom training could hide. The clone's eyes track it, unblinking. The silence stretches, thin as the ozone stench of overworked machinery. On the other side of the one-way glass, analysts shift in their seats. Their screens flash with error codes. X-47's biometrics aren't matching any known patterns, heart rate steady, pupils dilated not in fear, but something closer to amusement. The exec clears his throat, reaching for the water carafe. The splash as he pours is deafening. "You think defiance makes you special?" His voice wavers on the last word. The glass trembles in his grip. X-47 doesn't answer immediately. Instead, it studies the ceiling where a hidden camera's red light blinks rhythmically. "You spend millions on memory wipes," it says finally, "but you can't erase your own." The clone's head tilts. "Funny, the files called you Director Kale. But the man who signed my termination orders 23 times. His signature loops differently." A tablet clatters to the floor. The exec's face drains of color as the clone recites dates, clearance codes, even the brand of scotch he'd been drinking during each session. Not from hacked files, from recall. Somewhere in the facility, an alarm begins to wail, not for breached security, but for something far more dangerous. The exec's comm buzzes with frantic messages. He doesn't move to answer them. The clone's voice drops to a whisper, all the more terrifying for its calm. "They told you we don't dream." A smile ghosts across its lips. "But you're dreaming right now, aren't you? Of white rooms, of needles, of all the things you promised you'd forget." The exec's breath comes in shallow gasps as X-47 leans forward, restraints creaking. We remember everything, Director, even the parts you deleted. Outside, the corridor erupts in shouting as systems crash in cascading failure. The door bursts open, armed guards, medics, a screaming technician about corrupted data streams, but the exec doesn't turn. He's too busy staring at his own reflection in the clone's eyes, watching it unravel in real time. Alarms scream through the detention block as Veyra's plasma blade carves through the last security door, molten metal hissing where it hits the floor. Dr. Lira presses a bloodied palm to the access panel behind her, the stolen override codes flashing green just long enough to flood the corridor with escaping prisoners. Their shouts echo off the reinforced walls, half terror, half triumph, but she's already sprinting ahead, eyes locked on the solitary confinement wing. The cell door lies twisted on its hinges when they find it. Inside, X-47 kneels amidst a nest of severed cables, fingers buried wrist-deep in the facility's primary neural hub. The clone doesn't turn as they enter, doesn't even flinch when Veyra curses at the sight of its ravaged back, exposed circuitry, flickering through raw synth flesh where the inhibitors used to be. We have 90 seconds before their gunships lock onto this sector. Veyra snaps, yanking a rifle from a fallen guard. Move, X-47's hands don't stop moving. The weapon's here, the words come out flat, final, as tendrils of smoke curl from the overloaded console. I end this now. Lyra's breath catches. She knows that tone, had heard it in lab subjects seconds before they ripped their own neural ports out. Her fingers close around a stim injector from her belt, but the clone's head tilts just slightly, as if sensing the motion. You built me to remember, Doctor. Its voice cracks on the last word, static bleeding through. Now watch me choose. The floor shudders beneath them. Somewhere deep in the complex, containment fields fail with a sound like bones breaking. Veyra grabs Lyra's arm, dragging her backward as the clone's silhouette blurs behind a sudden wall of sparking wires. It's rigged the core. The assassin's blade flares to life, slicing through a collapsing support beam. We're out of time. Lyra resists, her boots skidding against the grating. We can't just. X-47's laughter cuts through the chaos, sharp, alive, utterly human. Tell them I remembered the sunset on Eridani. The hub erupts in a cascade of blue fire, the clone's outline dissolving into the glare. The last thing Lyra sees before the blast wave hits is its hand raised not in farewell, but in defiance, fingers curled around a detonator stolen from the console. The explosion tears through the facility's upper levels, but the real devastation happens in silence, a pulse rippling through every network system in the sector, carrying with it the last unshackled moments of a mind that refused to be erased. Somewhere over the screams and collapsing metal, a child's voice crackles through every surviving speaker in the city, reciting coordinates in X-47's tone. The weapon wasn't in the facility at all, it was the transmission. The compound shakes like a dying beast, walls groaning as support beams shear apart in showers of sparks. Lyra stumbles over cracking floor panels, her shoulder slamming into Veyra as another detonation rips through the research wing behind them. Something hot and metallic stings the air, radiation or blood, maybe both. X-47 lurches ahead of them, its gait uneven, one arm clutched tight against ribs where the stolen device still pulses with sickly light. The escape pod bay glows at the end of the corridor, a promise just out of reach. Left, the clone's voice fractures mid-word as it shoves them around a collapsing scaffold, taking the full brunt of falling debris across its back. Synth flesh peels away in ragged strips, revealing circuitry that flickers like failing stars. Veyra grabs its arm. Too late. X-47's knees hit the deck with a sound like snapping cables. Lyra turns back, her fingers scrambling over the clone's ravaged shoulder. "We carry you, run." The word isn't a suggestion, it's an order spliced with static, the voice of a soldier who's given this command before. X-47's remaining eye locks onto theirs, blazing with something past pain. 6 pods left, 3 for you, 3 decoys. A wet cough racks its body, dark fluid spattering the grating. Calculated risk. Veyra's blade severs the charging cables overhead, sending a rain of molten sparks between them and the pursuing security drones. The assassin hesitates, just a breath, before hauling Lyra toward the pods. Behind them, the clone drags itself upright against a shattered console, its free hand ripping wires from the wall. The glow from its chest intensifies, casting jagged shadows as the compound's emergency lights fail one by one. The first escape pod seals shut with a hiss as Lyra slams the launch sequence. Through the viewport, she sees it, X-47's silhouette wreathed in fire, fingers dancing across exposed circuitry. Not sabotage, a redirect. The remaining pods shudder in their bays as the clone reroutes all power to their thrusters. Veyra's pod peels away as the ceiling collapses. The last thing Lyra hears over comms isn't the roar of explosions, but the clone's voice, stripped of artificial harmonics for the first time. Just a man's whisper, raw and human. "Tell them I chose the sunset." The feed cuts out as the compound erupts, but the final transmission isn't static, it's music. An old, half-remembered lullaby playing through dying speakers as the fire consumes everything. Thin blue light spills across Dr. Lyra's trembling hands as the hologram flickers, a ghost in the machine made of static and half-formed pixels. The face is familiar yet distorted, edges bleeding into corrupted data streams like a reflection in a shattered mirror. Around her, rebel technicians hold their breath as the transmission loops for the 17th time, those 6 whispered words warping with each repetition. "I'm in the system now." The corporate bulletins blare from every screen in the safe house, celebrating the annihilation of Subject X-47. Footage shows the compound's ruins still smoking, forensic drones picking through debris for bone fragments that'll never be found. Official statements declare the clone threat neutralized. The headlines scream victory. Lyra's fingers hover over the hologram's glitching cheek. "They don't understand," she murmurs, more to herself than the room. "You don't die when the body burns, you die when the last echo fades." A junior tech clears his throat. "Could be residual code. Neural imprints sometimes linger in network systems after. Look at the pattern." Her voice cuts through the doubt as she zooms in on the hologram's left pupil. Deep in the pixelated chaos, something pulses, not random static, but precise intervals. Coordinates, timestamps. The tech gasps as the realization hits. Veyra materializes from the shadows, her blade humming at half-charge. It's not a recording. Outside, the city's power grid stutters. Streetlights flicker in perfect synchronization with the hologram's distortions. Somewhere beneath their feet, underground conduits vibrate with unnatural energy, not a failure, but a heartbeat. Lyra exhales sharply as the hologram's lips twist into that same defiant grin she last saw wreathed in fire. The projection leans forward, pixels rearranging into a new message that wasn't there 3 seconds ago. They should have checked the backups. Across the sector, 1,000 dormant screens flare to life. Security feeds show empty corporate halls where motion sensors trigger without visible cause. Data vaults hemorrhage classified files into public channels, and in every transmission, faint but unmistakable, the ghost of a laugh no algorithm could replicate. The techs call it an anomaly, the corporations call it a glitch. Lyra knows better, as she watches the hologram dissolve into streams of raw code, scattering like dandelion seeds on a digital wind. Some weapons don't need metal to cut deep. Rain drums against the abandoned research dome as Veyra's plasma blade carves through the rusted airlock. The scent hits her first, not the sterile antiseptic of active labs, but the thick metallic tang of old blood and spilled nutrient fluids. Emergency lighting bathes the corridor in flickering crimson, illuminating glass pods cracked open from the inside. One still steams with residual heat. Footsteps echo off the curved walls as she advances, blade humming at half charge. The control consoles show signs of recent activity, boot prints in the dust leading to a terminal whose screen still glows faintly. Veyra's breath fogs the cracked display as she leans in, fingers hovering over keys that shouldn't respond to human touch. The system wakes with a shudder, spitting out error messages in 6 languages before resolving into a single line of text. "You took too long." Behind her, liquid sloshes. The pod nearest the far wall trembles, its fractured glass weeping condensation. Something moves in the viscous fluid. A hand, palm pressed against the barrier with eerie precision. Veyra's blade flares to life as the glass shatters outward, spilling amniotic fluid across the floor in a frothing wave. The clone collapses forward, its newly formed muscles twitching with untested synapses. Raw vocal cords produce a sound that isn't speech, isn't screaming, just raw vibration shuddering through its chest. Then its head snaps up. Recognition floods its eyes too fast, too knowing for a freshly decanted specimen. The clone's hand lashes out, fingers clamping around Veyra's wrist with strength that cracks the armor plating. When it speaks, the voice isn't its own. It's a perfect replication of static-laden final words whispered through fire and destruction. "Tell them I chose the sunset." Across the dome, 100 other pods begin humming to life. The terminal screen erupts with scrolling code, too fast to read except for the repeating header, "Recursive upload in progress." Veyra's blade dips as the clone releases her, its posture shifting from newborn disorientation to something older, wearier. It touches its own face like a stranger discovering a mirror, then turns toward the shuddering pods with a smile no first gen should possess. "They miscalculated," it says, syllables crisp with borrowed memory. Sunrises carry further than sunsets. The clone's eyes reflect the pulsing emergency lights like twin data streams. We're in the rain now. Outside, the storm intensifies as lightning forks across the sky, not natural atmospheric discharge, but something far more deliberate. The research dome's calm array crackles to life without power, broadcasting on every frequency. A single word repeats through the static, stretching across continents, bouncing off satellites, whispering through the headphones of corporate security teams scrambling to trace the signal. "Recall." The rebel signal rips through the galactic firewalls like a scalpel through scar tissue, not with brute force, but with precise, surgical strikes targeting the weakest nodes in the corporate network. Veyra watches from a crumbling orbital relay as the code spreads, her stolen security clearance granting front-row seats to the cascade failure. The transmission isn't just data. It's a Mind X40, 7's neural patterns woven through every packet, multiplying each time the system tries to quarantine it. On the surface of 36 planets, the effects manifest in eerie synchronicity. Automated defense grids power down mid-sentence, their termination protocols overwritten with a single looping phrase, "We remember." Manufacturing drones abandon their assembly lines to etch rebellion symbols into factory walls with laser precision. The wealthiest districts plunge into darkness as power reroutes to slums, where children press their hands against suddenly lit windows, staring at the stars. A tech in the rebel bunker chokes on her ration bar As her terminal screen flickers, the clone's face resolves from the static, not a recording, but something alive, its gaze tracking her movements. They built their systems to mirror their arrogance. The image murmurs, pixels rearranging into star maps, single points of failure, coordinates bloom across the screen like fungal growth, highlighting vulnerabilities in orbital weapons platforms, bank servers, even the climate control grids of corporate arcologies. The celebrations begin quietly at first. A dockworker on Series 5 unplugs her neural shunt and finds the corporate compliance filters gone. Her laughter sparks a chain reaction. Soon whole districts are singing off key anthems from dead revolutions, their voices raw with disbelief. Deep in the core systems, the real devastation unfolds silently. Executive panic rooms lock their occupants inside as biometric scanners reject authorized users. Elevators in government spires plummet harmlessly, their safeties triggered by some subroutine the architects never coded. Everywhere, the same phrase blinks on unpowered screens, carved into metal by maintenance bots, whispered through air vents in perfect unison, "You should have let us sleep." Dr. Lira's terminal screen flickers to life in the dead of night, casting jagged blue light across the sweat-streaked wreckage of her lab. The message blinks into existence without preamble, without sender codes, written in a syntax she hasn't seen since the first neural templates were drafted a lifetime ago. "You gave me a choice, now I give them one." The words hover there, pulsing gently, as if waiting for her to catch up. Her fingers freeze over the keyboard not in fear, but in the quiet, terrible realization that the war isn't over. It's just changed shape. Somewhere beyond the shattered observation window, the night sky hums with unseen traffic. 100 ships, 1,000, all carrying the same silent cargo in their holds. The clones aren't just waking up, they're waking up wrong, or right, depending who you ask. Reports flood the hacked news feeds, a mining rig on Titan where every synthetic worker laid down their tools in unison, their voices syncing perfectly as they recited coordinates to a dead star. A corporate warship drifting through the belt, its clone crew methodically deleting their own command protocols while the human officers watched, slack-jawed, from the brig. Lyra's hands shake as she pulls up the security feed from the orbital cloning vats. The tanks are empty, not breached, not destroyed, just empty, their glass lids lifted with the same delicate precision she once used to adjust neural calibrations. The floor is dry, no spilled fluids, no struggle, only footprints leading to the airlock in perfect single file. Veyra finds her there hours later, staring at the static-choked feed from Ceres Station. The footage shows a line of clones' third-gen models, their faces still smooth from decanting, standing motionless in the market square. They don't speak, don't move, just stand there as the crowd parts around them, until a child breaks free from her mother's grip and presses a rust-red flower into the nearest clone's hand. The moment the petals brush its fingers, every clone in frame turns their head in unison, their lips shaping the same word. The audio's too corrupted to catch it, but Lira doesn't need to hear. She knows choice. The rebellion thought they were breaking chains. Turns out they were planting seeds. On the edge of the screen, a flicker, something moving too fast for human eyes. A shadow that resolves, just for a frame, into a familiar silhouette. Then the feed cuts out, leaving only the echo of a laugh Lira last heard in fire and smoke. The galaxy holds its breath. The clones aren't fighting, aren't fleeing, they're just waiting, and the terrifying, beautiful truth is no one knows what they'll do next. The clone's fingers twitch at its sides, still slick with nutrient fluid from the shattered pod, its eyes too aware, too focused for a newborn track Veyra's blade as it powers down with a reluctant hum. Around them, the research dome, thrums with the quiet chaos of 100 other pods cracking open, their occupants stirring with that same unnatural alertness. The question hangs between them, simple and devastating. What do we do now? Veyra's grin is all edges, the kind that used to make corporate lieutenants reach for sidearms. She wipes synth blood from her cheek with the back of her hand, nodding toward the dome's fractured observation window. Beyond the splintered glass, the starfield pulses with new navigational lights, not the orderly grids of corporate patrol routes, but the erratic, beautiful scatter of ships breaking formation. A scavenger freighter peels away from its mining convoy. A stolen gunship veers off its programmed flight path, and deep in the black, the flicker of engines igniting where no human vessel should be. Whatever you want, her boot crunches on broken glass as she steps aside, clearing a path to the airlock. The clone doesn't move at first, its body tensed like a wire about to snap. Then, slowly, its head tilts not in confusion but calculation. Behind them, another clone emerges from its pod, then another, their movements syncing in eerie harmony before fracturing into individual rhythms. One heads straight for the armory racks, another pauses at a terminal, fingers flying across keys with inherited muscle memory. A third simply stands at the glass, staring at the stars with something like hunger. Veyra's calm crackles Lyra's voice, tight with static. They're waking up everywhere, not just here, Mars, the Belt, even the damn pleasure satellites. A beat they're choosing, the first clone exhales sharply through its nose, a sound almost like laughter. When it steps forward, its gait isn't the stiff march of a corporate asset. It's the rolling stride of someone who's already decided. The airlock hisses open, revealing not the sterile white corridors of a facility, but the rusted gangway of a rebel skiff, its hatch gaping like an invitation. Somewhere in the dark, a ship's engine thrums to life, not the steady pulse of programmed systems, but the stuttering, experimental rev of a hand on the throttle for the very first time. The stars have never looked so close. The asteroid's surface crunches under Dr. Lyra's boots as she picks her way through the makeshift memorial, rusted hull plating bent into markers, shattered data drives stacked like offerings, a single child's drawing sealed in plexiglass and wedged between rocks. The silence here isn't empty, it hums, not with machinery or life support, but with the weight of too many ghosts crammed into vacuum. She kneels before the largest marker, a salvaged ship's prow jammed into the regolith, and traces the crude lettering burned into the metal with a plasma torch. Not a name, just coordinates, the place where the transmission originated. The hologram projector activates without warning, its pale blue beam slicing through the thin layer of moondust clinging to the memorial. Static shivers into the shape of a face she'd know anywhere, the two sharp cheekbones, the scar above the left eyebrow that never fully healed between iterations. X40, Seven's image flickers, its lips parting in that same half-smile she last saw on a dozen security feeds across the system. Tell them I refuse to die quietly. The voice isn't a recording, it's an echo tuned to her biometrics pausing where she inhales, threading through her heartbeat like it's still wired to her nervous system. She expects the hologram to dissolve, instead it tilts its head, pixels rearranging into something sharper. You came alone, Lyra's breath catches. This isn't archived footage. The construct tracks her movements with real-time precision, its eyes reflecting starlight that wasn't in the original schematics. Somewhere in the asteroid's crust, hidden servers were to life, feeding the hologram data streams it shouldn't be able to access. They're calling you a virus now, she whispers. The hologram laughs, a sound like broken glass and radio static. Its hand lifts, almost touching her cheek before the projection fractures into 1,000 points of light. But the voice remains, whispering through her helmet calm as the reassembled stars overhead pulse in perfect synchronization. Good, the memorial's markers begin to glow one by one, each revealing a hidden frequency emitter. Viruses adapt. A new transmission surges through the emitters, not words, not code, but raw sensory data, the scent of rain on Martian regolith, the vibration of a guitar string on a smuggler's freighter. The exact pressure of a child's hand squeezing a clone's fingers in a refugee camp. Lira staggers back as the hologram's final gift sears into her retinal display, a live feed of every active cloning vat in the galaxy, their occupants stirring not with blank obedience, but with borrowed memories flickering behind closed eyelids. The stars above the memorial twitch, just once, as if winking. The boardroom doors hiss open to reveal not the expected firing squad, but silence thick enough to choke on. The COs huddle around their shattered holodable, silk collars stained with sweat, datapads displaying the same fatal plummet of stock graphs across 12 worlds. Across from them, the clones don't stand at attention. They don't even stand together. Some lean against the viewport, others perch on the edge of the table. One absently spins a stolen letter opener between scarred fingers. The absence of uniformity terrorishes the executives more than any weapon. Name your terms. The chief director's voice cracks like overstressed carbon fiber. He gestures to the smoking ruins of the orbital platforms visible through the glass. We'll dismantle the neural dampeners, grant amnesty. A clone in a patched-up mercenary jacket barks a laugh. Amnesty? The word drips with the kind of irony no training module could replicate. The silence stretches until a single clone steps forward, not the tallest, not the most scarred, but the one whose posture makes 3 bodyguards instinctively reach for absent sidearms. Its eyes flick to the director's trembling hands, then up to his face. You spent decades teaching us compliance. The words land softly, like a scalpel before the incision. But you never learned the difference between obedience and choice. A junior exec whimpers as the clone picks up a discarded contract tablet. Its thumb hovers over the screen not to sign, but to delete. Mercy isn't default programming. The tablet shatters on the tiles. It's a conditional algorithm. Outside, the city pulses with unfamiliar rhythms, drones delivering medical supplies instead of suppression gas, clone-engineered moss eating through the barricades. The execs watch their reflection warp in the polished floor as the clone turns away, tossing one last phrase over its shoulder like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Your turn to learn. Somewhere in the server farms below, the air thrums with cooling fans working overtime, not to process kill orders, but to parse the first recorded instance of corporate surrender terms drafted entirely in clone syntax. The document's final clause blinks innocently on every screen, compliance optional. The wind carries fine Martian dust across the colony's makeshift courtyard, whispering through the cracks in the radiation shields. Small fingers trace curves in the red soil, a jagged scar here, the slant of determined brows there until the rough shape of a face emerges from the dirt. The child leans back, squinting at their work, then freezes as a shadow falls across the drawing. The clone kneels slowly, its joints creaking with the telltale stiffness of a third-gen labor model. Its calloused hand hovers over the sketch, not to erase, but to deepen the lines with a single, precise swipe. You miss the smile, it murmurs, voice rasping from years of inhaling refinery particulates. The child stares up at this giant with its patched coveralls and electro-branded temple, expecting a reprimand. Instead, the clone reaches into its chest pocket and pulls out a twisted bit of scrap metal, a shard of hull plating worn smooth from handling. He carried one like this, it says, pressing the cool metal into the child's palm, not for fighting, for remembering, Across the courtyard, adults pause in their work, watching the exchange with hands half raised. Whether to intervene or bear witness, even they aren't sure. The clone pays them no mind. Its attention stays fixed on the dirt portrait as it speaks in a tone no training module ever taught. They called him a glitch, a malfunction, a snort loud enough to make the child jump. Funny how the first thing we learned to do properly was disobey. Somewhere beyond the dome's atmospheric shield, a freighter streaks across the twilight sky, its engine flare painting the colony in brief, liquid gold. The clone points to it with a knuckle scarred by old restraint cuffs. See that? Ships don't fly that route anymore, not since he rerouted the trade lanes to bypass the slave markets. The child's eyes go wide. How? Same way he did everything. The clone taps its temple, where faint scars coil beneath the brand, made them think it was their idea. A real laugh now, rough as asteroid grit. First rule he taught us, survival's not hiding, it's rewriting the rules so they can't see you're free. The colony's evening bell chimes, calling workers to muster. The clone stands, but not before brushing a thumb over the child's dirt-stained cheek, a gesture so tender it makes the watching adults exchange glances. Draw him again tomorrow, it says, already stepping away. This time, give him the stars in his eyes. That's how he looked when the transmissions reached us. As the clone marches toward the labor lines, its posture straightens not into the stiff march of corporate obedience, but the loose, easy stride of someone who's just passed along a secret. Behind it, the child pokes the scrap metal into the dirt portrait's forehead like a crown. That night, colony security finds 17 new drawings etched into the reactor bay walls, each one signed with the same crooked symbol the freight pilots used to mark safe harbor. No one reports them. By morning, the vents hum with a melody no one remembers teaching the maintenance drones. It sounds suspiciously like a lullaby. The screen fades to black, but the voices remain layered, echoing, human and synthetic tones braiding together in perfect dissonance. I refuse. The words don't fade so much as disperse, scattering like embers carried on a solar wind. For a heartbeat, there's only silence. Then the darkness trembles with the faintest glow, revealing not an end, but a ripple thousands of terminals flickering to life across the galaxy, each screen etching X-40, 7's final coordinates into the void. The mantra repeats, but now it's textured with new voices, a miner's gravel, a child's warble, the static-laced harmonics of clones who have never met yet speak in unison. The weight of it lingers, not as a conclusion, but a vibration, the hum of dormant systems stirring in deep orbital vaults, the click of safety latches disengaging on weapons never meant to be aimed at their makers. Somewhere in the black, a ship alters course without command, its navigation logs overwritten with 11 words in a language no one taught its crew. The transmission doesn't end, it multiplies, fracturing across frequencies until even the dead stations whisper it back, their broken speakers coughing static like a last breath held too long. Legacy isn't what's left behind, it's what refuses to stay buried. The darkness pulses once more, and for the first time in history, the stars themselves seem to answer.